I was told to enter through the side door, to stay quiet, stay humble, stay invisible. While my brother accepted an award for innovation after changing the lobby scent, I was closing billion-dollar deals behind closed doors. They laughed at my PowerPoint. They called me the consultant. They told me to leave the legacy business to the men. What they didn't know was that I owned 51% of their company. And tonight, at their grand gala, under their chandeliers, I would press one button and end everything they thought they controlled. This is the story of how I rewrote a legacy that never included me. They laughed at my PowerPoint. I built a power tower. The Chicago skyline shimmered like ambition set on fire. From my office on the 43rd floor, I could see the heart of the city pulsing with motion, cold, ruthless, alive, just like the game I'd been playing for 5 years. Nova Estates wasn't always a name people whispered in investor meetings or tracked obsessively in Forbes. No. It started with a laptop, a tiny studio apartment above a coffee shop, and the sting of being dismissed by my own family. Madeline Carter, the consultant of the Carter family, the black sheep, the daughter who could have been something if only she followed the script. Let me take you back. 5 years ago, I stood in the main boardroom of Carter Legacy Properties, our family's real estate empire. Oak-paneled walls, glass chandelier, and a long table where every seat had been occupied by a man over 50, my father included. I pitched them a new future. Smart buildings, data-driven tenant management, green energy retrofits, predictive maintenance powered by AI, a strategy to pivot the company from fading legacy to cutting-edge dominance. Dad didn't even look up from his golf-themed calendar. "We don't do gimmicks," he said flatly. "Besides," Mom added, sipping her chamomile tea, "it's sweet that you want to help, darling, but why don't you stick to your little consulting gigs? Let the real professionals handle the big work." That meeting ended before I could finish my third slide. I walked out of that building and into a storm of quiet resolve. That day, Nova Estates was born. No capital, no team, just me and a list of everything they said would never work. Within 6 months, I closed my first acquisition, a rundown apartment complex on the edge of Minneapolis. Within 2 years, Nova had turned 5 failing properties into smart living hotspots across 3 states. By year 4, I was handling over $500 million in assets. And no one in my family knew. They still thought I was working with startups or coaching CEOs on Zoom. Cute. What they didn't know was that Nova Estates had quietly partnered with, acquired, or overtaken half of their competitor network. That the independent management group they just lost a $30 million deal to was mine. And now, as I looked over the reports on my screen, something even bigger was in motion. Carter Legacy Properties, my family's pride and joy, was failing. Occupancy rates dropping, clients leaving, innovation non-existent. And me? I owned 47.6% of their company, hidden behind 4 LLCs, 2 offshore trusts, and a silent shell partner in Nevada. Almost there. The plan was simple. Let them hold their annual gala. Let them give Elliot, the golden boy brother, another award for changing hallway wallpaper or renaming meeting rooms. And then, as the champagne flows and the crowd applauds, I'd flip the lights on. Showtime. My assistant tapped the door. "Miss Carter, your legal team is online too. Final paperwork is ready for review." I took a breath, not out of nerves, out of precision. This wasn't revenge, it was reckoning. Because when you spend your whole life being told you're too much, too new, too untraditional, you either shrink or you build something so massive, so undeniable, that even the people who erased you have no choice but to look up. And Carter Legacy? They're about to see what my little consulting business really became. They called it cute, now it's worth 9 figures. The Carter Legacy boardroom smelled like leather, ego, and stale entitlement. I remember the exact moment the oxygen changed in that room. It was the second I pulled out my proposal, neatly printed, color-coded, and backed by 3 months of predictive modeling and case studies. A 36-page blueprint, titled Rebuilding Carter Legacy, a Future-Focused Framework. Subtitle, What Got Us Here Won't Get Us There. I thought the title was clever. They thought it was arrogant. Dad leaned back in his chair, arms folded across a double-breasted pinstripe suit. Elliot scrolled through his phone, probably checking fantasy football scores. The CFO stifled a yawn. And me? I stood at the head of the table, heart pounding, but voice steady. I'd rehearsed this 100 times in the mirror, over takeout containers and coffee stains. Imagine a Carter property, I began, where every tenant interaction is tracked in real time, where maintenance issues are predicted before they occur, where energy use drops by 60% without sacrificing comfort. This isn't science fiction. It's already being done, and we can lead the wave. Silence. I moved to the next slide. By implementing smart home technology and green retrofitting across our urban portfolio, we stand to save over $12 million annually within 3 years. That's not counting brand repositioning and market share gains. That got their attention, briefly, until I brought up AI. Artificial intelligence can help optimize tenant matching, rent pricing, predictive leasing. Dad raised a hand. Hold on, here it comes. I appreciate your enthusiasm, Maddie, he said slowly. But Carter Legacy was built on people, not programs. These ideas sound more like a Silicon Valley experiment than a real estate business. Dad, this is the business now. Look at Vanguard Homes. Look at Polaris Living. They're eating up our markets because they... I said enough, he cut in. I've been running this company for 42 years. What you're proposing is a total overhaul, a disruption. We don't need that. Exactly, I said, still trying. Disruption is the point. Elliot looked up. You know, the font on your slides is kind of hard to read. Just saying. I stared at him. He was the same brother who got praised for innovation after changing the lobby scent from vanilla to cedarwood. Mom smiled politely from across the table. Sweetheart, she said, voice syrupy, why don't you use these ideas in your consulting work? You've built a nice little practice. You don't need to stress over this big corporate stuff. I froze. Nice little practice, big corporate stuff. Translation, you're not one of us. In that moment, I felt it. The invisible line between family and outsider. Not because I wasn't capable, but because I didn't fit their mold. I packed up my materials, not a single question asked, not one slide reviewed in full. I walked out of the boardroom without looking back, not out of defeat, but with the crystal clear certainty that I would never ask them for permission again. That night, I pulled an all-nighter, not to cry, but to rewrite the same blueprint. This time, with Nova Estates at the top, no more pitching to people who couldn't see. I would build the vision, brick by brick, deal by deal, and when the moment came, they would see every ignored slide come to life, but not in their company, in mine. They told me to use the side door. I bought the building. The invitation came in a cream-colored envelope, sealed with the Carter Legacy gold crest like some royal decree. You are cordially invited to the 40th anniversary gala of Carter Legacy Properties. Dress code, formal. Location, the Carter Grand Ballroom. At the bottom, in my mother's handwriting, please arrive discreetly. We recommend the service entrance. Of course. They didn't want guests seeing the consultant daughter walking through the main lobby in heels that cost more than Elliot's car lease. Too confusing, too inconvenient, too disruptive. I smiled, folded the invite, and slid it into the drawer beside a very different document. An ownership report showing I now controlled 49.9% of Carter Legacy stock. Just a sliver away from majority, but not for long. The gala was the perfect storm. Elegant, symbolic, and crawling with every investor, partner, and media figure who still believed the Carters were in control. They had no idea the iceberg was already beneath them. The night arrived crisp and clear, the Chicago air sharp against the dark sheen of my town car. The driver pulled up directly to the front entrance, ignoring the VIP access signs pointing to a side alley. Inside, the Carter Grand Ballroom glowed with dated opulence, crystal chandeliers that hadn't been updated since the Clinton administration, gold accents dulled by decades of denial. I stepped in, dressed in tailored navy velvet, a Cartier watch under my cuff, and my phone in hand. One glance at the screen, final stock transfer queued, ETA 23 minutes, perfect. The front desk manager nearly swallowed his tie when he saw me. Miss Carter, your parents mentioned a side entrance. That won't be necessary, I said, gliding past. I'm exactly where I should be. Inside the ballroom, champagne flowed and small talk buzzed around real estate markets and rising interest rates. Elliot spotted me first. He strutted over in a too-tight tux, grinning like he owned the place. Well, look who finally showed up, he boomed. Come to see your big brother get another plaque? I accepted a glass of champagne and took a slow sip. The vintage was cheap. Another Carter budget cut, no doubt. Wouldn't miss it, I said, not for the world. He leaned closer. They're giving me the Innovation in Real Estate Award tonight, he winked. Big deal. I pushed through a new tenant rewards app. Customers love it. I smiled tightly. He didn't know the app he launched was a white-labeled version of a product my team developed 2 years ago and sold to Carter Legacy through a dummy LLC. They'd been paying me for innovation and didn't even know it. In the far corner, my parents worked the room like aging royalty, kissing cheeks, shaking hands, clinging to relevance. Mother wore outdated Chanel. Father's laugh was just a little too forced. They had no idea the house they'd built was now standing on my foundation. I checked my phone. Transfer complete, 51.2% ownership. Congratulations, majority shareholder. Michael's message popped up right on cue. I turned toward the stage, where the MC tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us to honor 40 years of real estate excellence. and to recognize a rising star within the Carter family. The spotlight hit Elliot. He stood, smoothed his lapel, and waved like a game show host. I sipped again. This was it. The curtain was about to fall, not on me. On them. Sometimes you don't need to raise your voice, just raise the data. The room dimmed. Soft spotlight glided across crystal chandeliers. Waiters refilled champagne. My brother Elliot adjusted his cufflinks and strutted onto the stage like he was born there. "Good evening, everyone," he beamed, the cordless mic in his hand a little too comfortable. For 40 years, Carter Legacy Properties has stayed true to tradition, building, growing, believing in what matters most, family. I could almost hear our father mouthing the words from the front row like a proud ventriloquist. "And tonight," Elliot continued, "I'm honored to receive the Innovation in Real Estate Award. Because let's face it, staying ahead means knowing when to change. Like our recent update to the Tenant Rewards program." I tapped the command on my phone, and the ballroom went dark. The screens on every wall flickered. The Carter Legacy logo disappeared. Gasps filled the air. Then came the numbers. Real-time occupancy rates, revenue charts trending downward, negative tenant satisfaction scores, maintenance backlogs, failing safety inspections. Every failure, in high definition. "What the hell is this?" Dad barked, leaping from his chair. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, rising from my seat in the middle of the chaos, "forgive the interruption, but I thought it was time someone told the truth." All eyes turned to me. Mother paled. Elliot froze on stage, the mic still clutched in his hand. I walked toward him slowly, heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown. "Madeline, sit down," my mother hissed through clenched teeth. "You're embarrassing the family." "Am I?" I replied, stepping onto the stage beside Elliot. "Or am I the only one willing to show you what this family has been ignoring?" More slides appeared. Internal audits, leaked staff reports, 3 properties at risk of losing their 4-star certification, millions in deferred maintenance, investor complaints. "This is sabotage," Dad roared. "No," I said calmly, "this is accountability." Michael entered through the side, flanked by 2 assistants. Each began handing out black folders, confidential shareholder reports, ownership ledgers, legal documentation. Gasps turned to murmurs. A man in a navy suit from the back of the room stood up. "I'm sorry, did you say majority shareholder?" I nodded. "As of 14 minutes ago, I own 51.2% of Carter Legacy Properties." Dead silence. Elliot dropped the mic, literally. Mother's champagne flute slipped from her hand, shattering. "This isn't possible," Dad muttered. "Oh, it's very possible," I said, turning to face the room. "For years I was told to stay quiet, stay small, stay in my lane. So I built a different road, one where Carter Legacy isn't failing its clients, one where your innovation award," I glanced at Elliot, "isn't based on changing font sizes." The screen behind me shifted again, this time displaying the Nova Estates logo. A woman in a green dress gasped. "Nova Estates, that's yours?" I smiled. "Has been for years." One of the 5-star Property Association delegates whispered to her colleague. I knew that look. Recognition, respect, fear. The kind they never gave me. I took one last glance at my family, frozen, stunned, exposed. "From this point forward," I said into the mic, "Carter Legacy will no longer be a legacy of mediocrity. It will be rebuilt. Smarter, stronger, cleaner. And yes, that includes the carpet in the Carter Midtown lobby that still smells like the 90s. The room erupted, not in outrage, but in applause. It started slowly, then spread. Investors reached for their phones. Journalists whispered into recorders. A new name buzzed through the ballroom. Madeline Carter. Not the consultant, not the disappointment, not the shadow. The new CEO. They gave me the empty office. I filled it with power. The morning after the gala, Chicago shimmered under a soft winter sun. And from the corner office at Carter Tower, now under Nova Estates ownership, I watched the city stretch into motion. The view was the same, but everything else had changed. This office used to belong to my father. Now it was mine. They used to call it the Eagle's Nest. I called it the control room. Behind me, the Nova transition team moved like clockwork, installing new biometric systems, resetting executive credentials, preparing statements for the press. Michael entered with 2 tablets and a folder thicker than last year's Carter budget. "Security sweeps are complete," he said. "All Carter properties, 47 locations, are now under Nova protocol." I nodded. "Find anything?" "Oh, you'll like this." He handed me a report. Fraudulent expenses, duplicate invoices, luxury charges hidden under vague business codes, all tied to Elliot Carter. I scrolled through the entries. $14,700. Client retreat, wellness package, charged to a hotel where no rooms were booked. $3,900. Tech consultation paid to a company registered under his girlfriend's name. $2,400 asset storage at a wine cellar in Napa. So while I was running billion-dollar analytics, he was running off with company funds. I want that report compiled into a presentation, I said. For the board. Already done, Michael replied. They'll see it before lunch. Just then, my assistant's voice came through the intercom. Miss Carter, your parents are here. They don't have an appointment, but they're insisting. Of course they were. Send them in, I said, standing. Let's begin the final act. The door burst open like a storm cloud. My father charged in first, red-faced and huffing like the building still belonged to him. My mother followed, pearls tight, lipstick cracking, eyes wild. And Elliot trailed behind, looking like someone had cut off his oxygen the night before. How dare you change the building codes, my father barked, slamming both hands onto my desk. This is still Carter legacy. I sat down slowly, crossed my legs, and pressed a button beneath the desk. Massive digital panels lowered from the ceiling, flickering to life. The Carter logo dissolved, replaced by a modernized Nova Carter rebrand, sleek, glowing, global. This, I said, is now Nova Estates at Carter Tower. The name will be updated again after the full restructuring. Their eyes darted from screen to screen, plans, charts, demolition blueprints, timelines for complete overhaul. New leadership structure, ESG investment models, staffing audits, tech-driven operations. My mother sank into the leather chair opposite me, hands trembling. You're destroying everything we built, she whispered. No, I replied, opening the thick folder Michael left behind. I'm saving it. I flipped it open and tossed a stack of papers across the table. Guest satisfaction, down 41%. Occupancy rate, down to 58%. 3 properties weeks away from losing their 4-star status. You weren't preserving a legacy, you were writing its obituary. Elliot stepped forward, trying to muster a voice. Those numbers are internal, confidential. Not to the majority shareholder, I said smoothly, which as of last night is me. He opened his mouth again, but I cut him off with a swipe of the tablet. On screen, his expense report, every questionable line highlighted in red. My father paled, my mother gasped, Elliot froze. I suggest you read the next section carefully, I said. It's titled, Breach of Fiduciary Responsibility, Summary for Board Review. The silence in the room was deafening. But the board will never approve this hostile power grab, my father snapped. Oh, they already have the presentation, I replied, and the investor support, and the press coverage. I stood slowly and walked around the desk. You still think this is personal. It's not. It's business. The kind you never took seriously when it came from me. The screens behind me shifted again, live feeds of Nova Carter buildings across the country. One by one, old signage vanished. New logos lit up. From Boston to Denver to San Diego, a digital wave of rebranding washing over everything they once controlled. My empire, built silently, revealed boldly. My mother covered her mouth, my father stumbled back, and Elliot, he finally understood what it meant to underestimate someone who never needed applause. Legacy isn't built by bloodlines, it's built by results. The boardroom was colder than I remembered. 12 chairs, 11 board members, 1 hot seat, and I was sitting in it, by choice. Behind me, floor-to-ceiling glass framed the skyline. Before me, 12 sets of eyes studied the woman they once called the consultant daughter. Not anymore. I tapped the center console. The lights dimmed, the screens lit up, and the reckoning began. Let's begin with the numbers, I said, my voice calm, precise. Q4 operating margins down 19%, occupancy hovering at 58%, tenant retention lowest in 8 years. Slide after slide, bar graphs, pie charts, client satisfaction surveys, investor exit patterns. None of it was theory, all of it was reality, recorded, time-stamped, undeniable. The room was silent. I know it's tempting, I continued, to call this a bad quarter, but this is not a seasonal dip, this is a systemic collapse. I clicked again. 3 properties, Midtown, Riverside, and Quincy Square, are weeks away from losing their 4-star certification. Quincy Square just failed its last fire inspection. A gasp rippled across the room. The CFO scribbled something in panic. And then I dropped the final card. Now, I said, let's talk about this. The next slide showed Elliot's expense records, all compiled, verified, and backed by our legal team. $380,000 in miscellaneous executive travel. $52,000 on vendor consultations to companies that didn't exist. Private jet trips to Aspen marked as tenant outreach. Oh, and a $4,700 branding retreat at a vineyard, for 2. Each of these, I said, is a violation of company policy and fiduciary responsibility. Fabricated, Elliot shot up from his seat. This is all a setup. No, I replied, turning to face him. This is math, and math doesn't lie. I clicked again. Screens filled with footage, CCTV from partner properties, timestamps from credit card transactions, employee statements under seal. One board member shook his head. Another leaned over to whisper to the general counsel. I built this company, Elliot shouted, desperate now. You don't know what I've done. I know exactly what you've done, I said. You played CEO while I built $1 billion portfolio beneath your nose. Enough, my father growled from the back. You've made your point. Not yet, I said, eyes locked on the board. Let me show you what happens when we stop bleeding and start building. The next set of slides showed Nova's model. Smart buildings with predictive systems. 80% energy efficiency increase. AI-driven leasing, reducing vacancy by 35%. A 93% client satisfaction rating across 28 properties. And most importantly, $1.4 billion in asset growth in 36 months. This wasn't revenge, this was a rescue operation. This is the future of Carter Legacy, I said. If you let me rebuild it. The room was quiet. Then came the first voice. I vote yes, said Marlene Cruz, head of operations since 1998. I've seen what your data can do. We need this. Another hand raised, then another. One by one, the board voted 10 yes, one abstained in tears. By the time the gavel dropped, it was official. Elliott was removed. The executive board was restructured. And I, Madeline Carter, was named permanent CEO of the newly branded Nova Carter Group. As I stood from my seat, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt ready. Ready to rebuild. Ready to prove that legacy isn't about who you're born to. It's about what you build when no one's watching. They used to tune me out. Now they take notes. The morning sun sliced through the windows of the Nova Carter executive floor, clean, warm, unapologetically new. No more mahogany gloom, no more oil paintings of founders long gone. Now it was glass, light, and data. I stood at the head of the boardroom, but this time, not as the outsider trying to prove a point. I was the point. 12 board members sat silently, folders open, hands ready. Some of them had served under my grandfather. Some had voted against me years ago. All of them were here now, for me. Thank you all for returning so quickly, I began. As you're aware, the vote last night made our transition official. But what happens next is not just a change in leadership, it's a change in direction. I tapped the center tablet. The screens around the room came alive, renderings of future properties, timelines of operational shifts, predictive growth maps. This is the Nova Plan, I said. A 4-phase revitalization of Carter Legacy's core infrastructure, financial model, and market positioning. I pointed to the map. Phase 1, full tech upgrade of all underperforming properties, smart systems, predictive maintenance, energy optimization. Phase 2, AI integration for leasing, pricing, and tenant relations. Phase 3, sustainability retrofitting across all Class A and B assets. Phase 4, rebrand and expansion into 2 new U.S. markets, beginning with Seattle and Charlotte. There was no rust in my delivery, no doubt in my voice. This wasn't theory anymore. This was architecture. And I had built every brick of it while they were busy giving Elliott trophies for updating email signatures. Marlene Cruz leaned forward. What's the projected ROI? 24% within 18 months, I replied. 43% over 3 years, conservatively. Murmurs filled the room, impressed, curious, convinced. And the capital? Another board member asked. We're liquid. Nova's backers remain intact post-merger. Plus, I smiled, we've secured bridge financing from 2 of the very firms that once funded your competitors. They've jumped ship, onto ours. The room was still. Then came the moment I hadn't expected. Robert Halbrook, a board member who once scoffed at my AI proposals, who once called me idealistic at best, raised his hand. I was wrong, he said. The sentence just hung there, unusual, quiet, heavy. I thought you were chasing trends. Turns out you were reading the future. He looked around. Madeline, you have my full support. That's when I knew I hadn't just won a seat, I'd earned their ears. Not because I raised my voice, but because I brought the receipts and the results. An assistant knocked softly and entered the boardroom. Apologies, she said. Press conference begins in 10. Of course, time to show the world what we just voted into existence. The board stood with me. Elliott wasn't here, neither were my parents. But their silence was its own kind of headline. Outside the press room, Michael straightened my blazer and handed me a folder. They want to know what changed, he said. What made you take over? I smiled. Tell them I was tired of being the footnote in someone else's success story. As we stepped into the room, flashes exploded, cameras clicked, mics extended. The world was listening. And for once, it was my name they were writing down. Madeline Carter, CEO. They handed me rejection. I built a legacy. The city blinked beneath my office window, rows of lights stretching like veins, pulsing with life. It had been exactly 1 week since the boardroom vote. 7 days since I stood behind that podium, cameras flashing, headlines screaming. Consultant daughter takes control in historic corporate coup. Nova Carter's Madeline Carter, the silent architect of a new era. Legacy rewritten, from rejection to CEO. But tonight, things were quieter, and that's when the past usually finds its way in. Miss Carter, my assistant's voice broke the silence. They're here. I didn't need to ask who, I already knew. Send them in. The door creaked open. First came my father, his tie undone, the fire in his step reduced to embers. Then my mother, dressed impeccably as always, but her eyes softer. And finally Elliot, hands in pockets, gaze flickering between pride, bitterness, and something almost like regret. They stood there like strangers in a house they used to own. No greetings, no apologies, just tension wrapped in old expectations. This building, Dad started, gesturing toward the glass walls, feels unfamiliar. It should, I replied. It's not built on denial anymore. He flinched. So did Elliot. Mother sat down. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. I left this on your desk last week, she said, sliding it toward me. But you never responded. I opened it. A note, handwritten, elegant, shaking. We were wrong. All these years we were so wrong. Please, can we talk? Mom. I folded it carefully and placed it in the drawer. I'm always open to conversation, I said gently, but not to revisionism. Elliot leaned forward. Do you have any idea what it feels like to watch your little sister become the empire? I looked at him, direct, calm. Do you have any idea what it felt like to build it, while watching you get awards for doing nothing? Silence. Then Dad finally said it. We didn't see you. No, I said, you chose not to. Another silence, but this one wasn't cold, it was tired, real, almost freeing. I didn't do this to hurt you, I continued. I did this to save what you were destroying, and to prove that vision is louder than legacy. I stood and handed each of them a folder. Here's my offer. You can retain a symbolic stake in Nova Carter, 5%, split between you three. You'll have no voting power, no board presence, but you'll still be connected, quietly. My father opened the folder. Mother's eyes welled. Elliot didn't move. You can also walk away, I added. Take a buyout, no hard feelings. But either way, this is no longer the Carter family business. They left without signing. Not out of pride, but out of knowing it wasn't theirs anymore. And that was enough for me. Later that night, I stood in the heart of our new flagship property, Nova Carter, Chicago, watching the lights of the lobby come to life. A digital display glowed at the center. Innovation, integrity, reimagined legacy. M. Carter, CEO. Michael appeared beside me. The international press wants a quote for next month's Forbes cover. I thought for a moment, then smiled. Tell them this. Sometimes the best way to honor a legacy is to rewrite it. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't loud. It's quiet, strategic, built one step at a time while no one's watching. Because you don't need to fight to be seen. You just need to build something so powerful that the world can no longer ignore you. If they underestimate you, let them. Just remember, legacy isn't about whose name is on the door. It's about who held the vision when no one else believed. And when the time comes, don't shout, don't beg, just walk in and let the truth speak for itself. If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of your own silent strength, don't forget to like, share, or leave your thoughts below. And if you believe that quiet power is still power, subscribe to Sweet Revenge, Happy Ending, where stories like this are more than drama. They're blueprints for becoming unstoppable.